Bo is no longer undefeated. Going into his MMA career, Bo Nickal was one of the most hyped up prospects in MMA with how decorated of a wrestling pedigree he had. But he just took his first loss in MMA to Reinier de Ridder in devastating fashion, getting stopped by knees. And this was a bad look for how much the UFC seemed to have been hyping him, putting him even on UFC 300, and how much Bo Nickal talks about other guys like Khamzat Chimaev, Dricus du Plessis, and undermines their skills. So this is how Bo Nickal got exposed.
Well, before we get into that, we're Punch Talk and are bringing you guys daily combat sports videos, so if you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to help support the channel. Bo Nickal made an early name for himself with only his second fight in MMA being on Dana White's Contender Series, where he made a splash getting a rear naked choke in the first round and would go on to have one more Contender Series fight, another finish in the first round with another submission, and many were very hyped to see what he could do with MMA, of course with the history in the UFC with very high skilled wrestlers with a lot of credentials such as Daniel Cormier in the past, Olympic guys who have done big things in the sport, and it looked like maybe Bo Nickal could be the next of that breed. He would go on to have his UFC debut on UFC 285 with the John Jones vs. Ciryl Gane card and put on another first round finish, again submission with the arm triangle choke. And it was looking like early on at least the hype was pretty real. His ground game looked legit. He was able to mix it up well with his submission game. So it was looking like maybe Bo could be a very well-rounded fighter overall, but I think this is where the lines started to get blurred, and he and as well some of the audience were starting to believe some of the hype, and it was very evident early on that all Bo really had was an overhand, and it was only really landing against low-tier competition. And early on you could see the confidence was kind of turning to more cockiness, and it looked like he was believing his own hype a little too much, but at this point it didn't really matter because he was undefeated and doing everything he said he would. But although he had this amazing early UFC run, but where we really saw some issues was against Paul Craig, a UFC veteran who has good wins, beating Ankalaev, making him tap, and Paul Craig is a very dangerous submission threat. And in this fight, we just saw Bo not even wanting to go to the ground, scared that he might get choked out, not even attempting wrestling, which is of course his easiest path to victory. And it seemed like every single strike he would throw consisted fully of an overhand. He had no diversity in his game striking wise, and the holes were evident.
Yeah, Bo Nickal was very hyped up. Even from the UFC, it seemed like they really wanted him to be that next guy. Like you said, one of those great American wrestlers. We've had a lot in the sport, the likes of Henry Cejudo, Daniel Cormier, etc. And Bo somehow made his way onto the main card of UFC 300, one of the biggest events they've done in the last decade pretty much, with the likes of Yuri Prohaska, Aljamain Sterling, former champions on the prelims. Meanwhile, Bo Nickal was on the main card. It definitely felt like he was getting special treatment from the UFC, and it's not like he was fighting a big name. He was fighting Cody Brundage, which is not the greatest opposition to say the least, and like you said, in that Paul Craig fight, not a great look, him not really going to the ground, him not using his best asset, which is the wrestling, even though he still got it done. It just seemed like his words didn't really align with his actions when he was talking about the likes of Dricus du Plessis and Robert Whittaker and how they're amateurs and how they don't look good whatsoever, and then saying Khamzat Chimaev's wrestling is nowhere near his, and even saying he wouldn't be surprised when they fought if he was like a minus 1,000 favorite, which in hindsight is very delusional to say the least, even back then. His wrestling just hasn't seemed to have translated too well into MMA. He's doing well, but obviously the UFC was building him carefully, not really stepping him up too quick into the deep end, rising up the ranks, never having fought a ranked contender until he fought Reinier de Ridder, who is a former ONE FC champion, who is a very decorated grappling pedigree, even coming into the UFC, beating Gerald Meerschaert, and then submitting Kevin Holland fairly easily within the first round. I don't think Holland even landed a glove on him, and Reinier de Ridder just seems to be one of those upcoming next guys in that middleweight division. So when he fought Bo Nickal, it was definitely a compelling matchup, but Bo was still a moderate favorite, about minus 400 going into this fight, which I don't really see why that would be the case. Reinier de Ridder is a great grappler. Sure, Bo Nickal had a lot of hype, and he had a phenomenal decorated wrestling career, but in MMA, he really hadn't proved much up until that point, and in this fight, he really got found out. Reinier de Ridder took Bo down for the first time in his career. Bo had his moments in that first round with the takedown, but on the feet, Reinier de Ridder was a little bit too much. Bo Nickal started to gas, started to slow down, and it seemed like he was very, very unresponsive to the strikes of Reinier de Ridder. He didn't know how to defend himself. Reinier de Ridder was throwing the straight punches, getting Bo up against the fence, throwing those knees in the clinch, and that's ultimately what spelled the end for Bo Nickal.
Yeah, this was the real test to see how far Bo could really get in the UFC. And with Reinier being such a tough guy, it was really an interest and a wonder how Bo would perform, especially coming off that very underwhelming Paul Craig fight. What improvements had he made? What did he focus on in camp to get better? But it just seemed like we saw more of the same. Like you said, having some wrestling success, nothing major though, and he got outstruck by Reinier de Ridder, who isn't that great of a striker himself in general, which is not a great look. Once again, his striking had not improved. And it's just been one-dimensional since he's came into the UFC, just consisting of overhands again. I think ever since he had that success being able to knock out Valentine Woodburn with the overhand and kind of believed he had the power to put guys out. Maybe he didn't see it as a real area that he needed to train, and he could kind of rely on power compared to technique. But these days, that just doesn't get you too far. There's so many guys in the UFC now, top level, who are so well-rounded, who can do it all, mix it up, and have the technique both grappling and striking wise. So it's not like this is the end overall for Bo Nickal. He's still 29 years old, hasn't had that many fights. That was his only 8th fight. But just compared to how cocky he was in the lead up, talking about other guys who are far more successful than him in the sport, talking down on UFC champions compared to Bo, who hasn't accomplished anything in the sport, it's just not a good look in general. And how do you expect to rally fans behind you if you talk that much about better fighters than you and then put on performances like that? But at the end of the day, this is going to be a huge rebuilding process for him now. Try to climb back. He was ranked, but I'm sure he won't be ranked anymore after this, and he's going to have to find his way back.
Yeah, I mean, this is MMA. One loss does not define your career whatsoever, but we've been seeing a lot of guys with a lot of hype come in, and some struggle to make it to that top level. Some guys succeed, some guys thrive, but overall it just doesn't seem like Bo Nickal is where he says he is, at least in this sport. It's going to have to be a rebuild process now, and that's okay. That's fine. You don't have to be a world beater from the jump, from the start of your MMA career. At the end of the day, he's very green in MMA. He's only been training striking and the full array of mixed martial arts for only a couple of years. He has time to grow, and Reinier de Ridder at the end of the day is way more experienced than MMA, so there's no shame really in losing to Reinier de Ridder, but it's just the fact that his level definitely get exposed, and right now it's not a world level. It's not one of the best in the world. It's maybe not even a ranked middleweight level. We're gonna have to see. And at the end of the day, a lot of people like to jump to fraud checking, and in this case, I'm kind of gonna get behind it because Bo Nickal was hyping himself up to be the second coming of Khamzat Chimaev, if not way better than Khamzat. And when you talk down on the top of the division, the likes of Dricus du Plessis, who obviously looks funny and obviously isn't the most conventional fighter, it just doesn't look great when you're not either, definitely to say the least, standing up at least. But overall, Bo has potential. This isn't the end. It's only one loss, but it is going to be tough to make his way up the ranks. I don't know if he's going to be a future world champion. That's really hard to say right now. As it's looking, it doesn't seem like it's the case. So the middleweight division is definitely looking interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if Bo's going to be in the mix for the coming years. So let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Will Bo Nickal ever become a world champion? And if you guys enjoyed and want to see more UFC content, check the 10 UFC fights we need in 2025.